Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Today we are going to address reinforcing feminism in video game development and community. With this project, we seek to highlight the ways in which men and women are portrayed in video games. We aim to reach out to designers and players alike to get them thinking of ways in which people become objectified in a digital setting for our entertainment. We specifically focus on the effects that these images have in reinforcing stereotypes, and how we can work to change those images and stereotypes in like manner. Over-sexualization is one of the most debated topics in the ethics of gaming, partially because people don't know how much of it there is. When video games give female protagonists, they believe they're doing a favor to women gamers, and in some ways, they are. However, oftentimes, these protagonists are given unrealistic breast sizes and revealing clothing in dire situations, like gunfire. Developers have given no thought to practicality. This unfortunately is intended to attract a male audience and sends a message to women that video games are for men and that men are sex addicts. Contrary to many gamers' beliefs, over-sexualization is not the only problem women face when it comes to video games. While women have been given more roles in the protagonist character category, they are rarely seen in support characters or antagonists. It is important to see women in every category of roles, even if it means they are evil and plotting in the hero's demise, because it shows that women are powerful and can be much more powerful than men, just as men can be much more powerful than women at times. This shows equality of gender and sexes. But instead, women are often the damsels in distress in these games, and usually worthless to the development of the plot or dialogue. Another huge problem is the sexual harassment that goes along with simply being a woman. On live streams, oftentimes women are demanded to take their clothes off or show their chest on the webcam. Women's opinions are often downplayed because gamers online often view them as sexual objects. Most of this happens because online communities have a sense of security when it comes to their online anonymity. Since nobody knows who you are, you can say whatever you want, whereas in real life you have a filter and you care what others think of you.
While having stereotypes about women in video games seems harmless, the implications are much less so. As a computer science major, I can say that almost all of my peers got into programming because at one point they were a gamer and they were thinking philosophically about how the code works, how the code behind the game works. Having fewer women in gaming means that we will have less female programmers overall. This is a big problem as the world of computing started when women were hired to encode and decode messages for World War II. Women will be important when artificial intelligence and machine learning become more relevant. With machines only learning through men, we will reach problems similar to that of the medical field, where all medical testing is currently done on men. If artificial intelligence only learns through male patterns, we could end up teaching these machines sexist behaviors such as Microsoft's Tay, which is a Twitter chatbot that learned sexism and to have a deep fascination for Hitler. The stereotypes that are enforced can result in an objectification of women, which will result in a lower self-esteem if you're a woman or a false sense of superiority if you're a man. The other side of this is that it creates an unnatural expectation of beauty for women. Everyone likes to see themselves as the characters in the game when they are truly immersed. and will compare themselves to these characters. This may lead to players feeling less attractive, or that they're not living up to the video game designer's unrealistic imagination. This is bad because it can give women and men alike self-esteem issues and self-doubt.
To address our problem statements, we would like to introduce some methods for intervention. To start the intervention, we would write a letter or meet with some video game designers. We would make it clear that innately there isn't anything wrong with video games, but if that we aren't careful, we would be allowing them to become weapons to reinforce the stereotypes of our society. The first step is to explain the problem so that the developers understand why the proposed changes need to be made. After doing this, we need to explain the impacts that this has on society. For example, by creating images of women in video games with large busts and flawless features, it can set an unrealistic expectation for what women are supposed to look like in the real world to be pretty. After explaining how this impacts our society, we need to focus on what we can do to change the video games, specifically targeting the developers or the designers, and also how gamers can react to a game that reinforces these stereotypes. The designers should seek to represent both men and women as equals in video games, with no difference in playability or clothing coverage. Finally, we would finish by asking questions and feedback about the effects that video games have in reinforcing these stereotypes. This kind of intervention would work because it would show the game designers that by changing the way in which individuals are portrayed in games, it can have an impact on society and the profitability of the companies making these games. Since we have demonstrated that there is a problem with women being excluded from the video gaming community, and that this problem will affect future generations of gamers, I would like to propose a few ideas that would ameliorate some of these issues. First of all, there should be an improved reporting system where women or minority groups can report harassment or flag a game for over-sexualized, racist, or sexist content. There are some ways to do this in games already, typically under a harassment tag, but the difference is that in games it tends to differ, and in some it is run by a system as opposed to the game. I also believe that there are more popular games that should have women-only servers, so that it can be easier to find like-minded individuals when playing online games. I understand how some people may view this change as being sexist or furthering the gap between men and women in gaming, but what this is really doing is keeping female gamers that might leave gaming entirely due to the online abuse that they may have received. Giving games more choices when it comes to decorating their characters or even just choosing their gender allows players to feel more immersed in the game. I think that this is part of the clothes and the armor that the character wears shouldn't be limited to gender-specific choices. Often in video games, women are wearing chainmail bikinis that expose their midriff as they charge into battle. Clearly this isn't realistic, which it doesn't have to be since it's a video game. However, I think that these characters should be able to change how the armor looks. If they are wearing that chest plate for its game's in-stat abilities, they should be able to wear it, but change the appearance to whatever makes the gamer feel comfortable.
A video game goes through several different stages of design before its official release. Step 1 starts with the game developers. So we ask ourselves, how can game developers contribute to change the current video game from a feminist perspective? Within the infrastructure of the developing game company, there can be groups and subdivisions added to ensure diversity is increased and that behavior is regulated in-game. This can include code that will automatically censor or automatically punish perpetrators. The developers are often directly in control of the game post-release and can implement new patches to the game based on the community feedback. Therefore, developers often have an open line of communication within the gaming community. They can then be a driving force in the community to reinforce diversity and acceptance. This can be done by nominating admins and moderators in-game to monitor and implement punishment in real time. Also, the developers can themselves set up a support network to report individuals. For example, Jenny Hanover, shown in the picture below, regularly takes screenshots of harassment she receives on Xbox Live and posts to the community to expose individuals. Developers can then reinforce this type of action by making it a more official feature of the game itself.
Companies such as Microsoft or Sony will benefit from the shift in target audience in a variety of ways. Firstly, these companies will be able to obtain more profit because they will have a wider audience buying through their products. As we discussed before, getting more people into gaming will also inspire more people to go into computer science fields and become developers. Finally, these companies would have more individuals to test their games when they get to the beta stage. Having possible consumers test the games is a tactic that many video game companies use to not only advertise their product, but to fix any last-minute bugs or issues, and putting more people in these roles will only help the final product. Every individual has a different opinion and perspective of a video game when they play it, and by including more women in the beta testing stage, it could help find and highlight more problems better than if it was only men.
Escape from Tarkov is a highly anticipated first-person shooter survival game set in Russia. Currently in alpha testing, it has received critical acclaim and large community base. When exploring the frequently asked questions on the developer's website, one will find that the developers have no intent on including female representation in the game. Female representation and sexism in the community is worse in the first-person shooter war genre. Currently, Escape from Tarkov reinforced the male stereotypes portrayed in video games. However, while it is now in the spotlight of the genre, the developers have the opportunity to help reinforce change within the genre. We used Escape from Tarkov as an example of how a community member can reach out to support change by emailing the game developers about female representation. The following slide shows an example of such an email that was sent to the Human Resources Department for the developers of Escape from Tarkov.
Introduced by the last slide, this is an example of how a community member can contribute to creating change. Not using one's voice is tantamount to perpetration of the current norms.
As you can see in the email above, this is how one individual of the community can attempt to enforce change in the current climate of video games. It can be as simple as making the developers aware of your concern, posting on the forums to see if other members of the community feel the same way. And the forums are a powerful tool because the developers, especially when the game is in early development, are constantly in contact with the community looking for improvements on the game that can help. If we want to change the way that video games are designed, we need to use intervention like this to target game designers directly. If we do not go to the source of the new games, we cannot hope to change the situation. By highlighting the problems created by video games that are designed in a way that perpetrates stereotypes, we can hope to sway designers to be more cognizant of the effects that these stereotypes have on our society. Our ideas of video game reform are ideas about change that could be used to fix the problems in the video game design and industry to be more open to all types of individuals. If we continue to do nothing, more people will be marginalized and we will still fail to live in a society as equals.